Okay, so I wanted to make this video to kind of contextualize some things that I'm seeing within the top eights or the tournament results from things like the Weekender, the LVO GT, the LVO Invitational, and Everwinter, because I see a lot of responses on Discord and a lot of people talking about the game, but they don't apply context to the situations. And I think there's a lot of hyperbole surrounding results, specifically with Thor 2. And let me start by saying that Thor 2, in my opinion, is too good. Thor 2 needs to be toned down. But at the same time, some of the reactions to Thor 2 are a little hyperbolic, or more than a little hyperbolic, to be honest. I mean, that's just what people do, right? On Discord and gamers in general, is that we'd rather complain. So again, I think Thor 2 is too good. I want to see him changed. I want to see Thanos changed again. I want to see Thanos deleted from the game entirely. Personally, it's just I just hate playing against that character. But when it comes to Thor 2, I think that we are hyping up the results a little bit too much. And again, that's not to say that he's not too good, but it's like the panic button that people hit. So let's look at the GT for instance. The story that I heard, three different people DM me this fairy tale. Eric lost to two Asgard players and then switched to Asgard and won the Invitational. Oh, look at that. Asgard's so bad, so easy. They're the evil bad guy, Asgard. Okay, he lost to Art, who played Thor 1. He played the Thor 1 leadership in 3 of his 6 games. Oh, yeah, but he probably played Thor 2 in the other. Nope. He played Thor 1 in 5 of his 6 games in the GT. Art was the Allfather at one point prior to Thor 2's release. Oh, yeah, but look at this Asgard player here. Who even is he? I have no idea. Maybe he's amazing. Irrelevant. He didn't play Asgard. I don't know why it says that there. He probably hit Asgard instead of Avengers. The A letters, etc. Played first Avenger. Does he have... He doesn't even have Thor 2 in his list. But if you just look here, your gut reaction is Thor 2 is broken. Look at these players, excelling. Who is Art Washburn? I've never seen him do well in a lunch meet. Oh, he doesn't play TTS. He doesn't like playing on the computer. But the guy goes X and 1 at like every event he goes to, regardless of what he plays. If we go back to Atlantic City Open last year, there he is, 3-1 with Asgard, a month before Thor 2 drops. Okay, his only loss being to the degenerate Hellfire player, me, that came, going into the top 8. So let's go back here. So when's the next time we see an Asgard player? Well, we have DeLuca, but Mike DeLuca is Mike DeLuca. The guy is going to go X and 1 at an event, regardless of what he plays. He's playing Thor 2 because he thinks it gives him the best chance to win, and he's bright about that. Right, his list is pretty silly if you watch it in action. But then we go down, and we've got this guy playing, some Asgard as well. We've got some Van, but ultimately we don't see like as much Thor 2 dominating as people claim. And that's not, again, not to say that Thor 2 isn't too good. I do believe that. But I think like the gut reactions from some people is like a little excessive because we don't apply context to the things we're looking at. It's not that hard to click a button and just see what people are playing. Barbajonks, look at this guy, 5-1 with Cabal. Surely he's playing a gross Cabal list with Thanos and maybe he's got a Thor 2 in there. Oh no, he is playing 2022 Marvel and threw Wrecking Crew in there and went 5-1 in the GT. So I just think it's important to click on the lists, and see what these players are playing, or like look through, some of their previous history. If we look at Everwinter, caller messaged me, oh, Everwinter, the North American meta is so killy, and I had to explain to him, well, first of all, North America is a pretty massive area, which is difficult and expensive to travel between. So this is not representative of all of North America, and it is killier. But if you look at what people played here, they're largely playing the thing they like. Cyclops. Both Asgard players were playing Asgard before Thor 2 came out. The Webs player has been playing Webs forever. Gabe, myself, and DeLuca are the degenerates here. I'm playing Wakanda because I think they're fun, and then I added Thor 2 for degenerate reasons. DeLuca plays the grossest thing he can. And who's the other? Oh, and Yeah, I mean that's really it. Schmidt's playing, Midnight Suns, which are really good, and really popular, despite Schmidt thinking he's a snowflake. Clearly he's not. And Ben's playing Dracula. Like, and then if we even go down to the 3 and 2s, like Menard is playing First Avenger, Simon is playing Apocalypse. Like these are people. Steven's been playing Shield forever. The people that are at this event, Noah was playing Asgard way before Thor 2 came out. Andy always plays X-Men. Matt always plays Web Warriors. Phil always plays like these. Most people at these events are playing the thing they like. So I think sometimes when people look at everything through a hyper competitive lens, they forget that the majority of players that play MCP are playing for fun. It's an exploding crits game where sometimes, you know what, I'd rather lose playing the thing I like than, trying to win and maybe losing with a thing I'm less excited to play. Um, you know, and if we look at like the top 8 of something like Everwinter, it's like pretty similar to the Atlantic City Open from the previous year, where you're seeing a lot of the same players, or at least similar metas, and here we actually have a lot more scenario play. So I don't think that saying that North American meta is like so much killier is necessarily fair, especially as we drop down, we see some more scenario being played. But I think not knowing who the players are makes it hard to have context. Same thing with the Mutant Weekender. I don't know these players. I don't play in Europe. I know some of their names because of things like the TTS League, but I won't pretend to look at some of these lists and be able to extract a lot of information because I don't know them. Like and then we look down in the Mutant Weekender, we're like, look, oh, the top 8 is, heavy scenario and super unique. All right, well, this is 64 players, and we have 26 players that are X and 1. So, like, what the hell does top 8 even mean? Like, the reality is that and I actually really like their format. I think the pod thing is really cool. But when you have a cutoff at a top 8 out of 64 players and you only played 4 rounds, like, can you really extrapolate a lot of information by just looking at these 8 players? No, that seems silly. You have to look at the full 26, and also keep in mind that a bunch of these 2 and 2s are, maybe a die roll away from being 3 and 1 and being somewhere up higher and breaking this up. So if you just look at the Mutant Weekender and just look at the top 8, then you really don't understand how statistics work, and you really don't understand how to apply context to a situation, because when you have 26 players go X and 1 or better, it's really, really difficult to get a good read on the game here. We get more context by looking at their individual pods and how players performed, etc. But really, when it comes to something like MCP, you have to look at trends over time. Like, that's why Thor 2 is too good, because we look at Asgard's win rate being in the 60% over 6 months. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that there's a lot that you can take away from these various games, and we have to look a little bit deeper. Like, if I looked at John Falco, I'm not really that familiar with him, even though he's a North American guy. And I looked at his games, like, he's got events where he went 3-0 or did really well with old Asgard. So him getting new tools and continuing to do well is not surprising. One of the things I see people talk about is, Asgard makes people who, 30% win rate better. It takes bad players and makes them good. It's like, okay, well, turns out if you play a good list, you do better at events, right? Like, is that a controversial thing? Is that something like a hot take? That when we play good lists, we do well at events? Like, who's winning events and consistently top 8ing without playing strong lists? Like, who are these snowflakes I'm not aware of? There's one in all of MCP that I could think of off the top of my head, and that is Isaac, the Spider-Foes player. Spider-Foes are not that good, but that dude is consistently doing well no matter where he goes. So I look at it and I just see some of the criticisms that people levy, and I just find them like a little hyperbolic, in our takeaways. Good players play good lists, right? We look at who's winning. No one's really winning big events by playing, mediocre lists. It just doesn't really happen. Sure, I'm sure there's local events. You can win a local event, whatever. But when we look at cons, we don't see players typically winning without bringing a good list. I played Liam Watt once in the cuts, and we were talking about. I said something. I was like, you're a better player. And Liam's response was, "No, I play broken things. Like when you play broken things, it makes it easier to be a good player." When you listen to Eric's interview with Nate after the LVO final, he says like, when it reaches a point where you're playing players as good as you or better than you need your list to have your back at some point. So people saying like, oh, the Asgard this or that, the Asgard players are getting carried by Asgard. It's like, uh, yeah, I mean they're playing a good list, so they're doing well. That makes sense to me. Do I think that it's a complicated list to pilot? Absolutely not. Do I think Thor 2 needs to be nerfed? Yes. But I think sometimes the hyperbole surrounding some of this is just a little excessive and that we lose some context. Just because a player, typically is a 50-60% win rate and then they jump up 10%, 20%, I don't see that as necessarily indicative that like the thing is super broken. Because if you're going from playing Sentinels and now you're playing Asgard, yeah, I would expect your win rate to go up tremendously. Um, that's just the nature of the game. When you play good things that are more consistent, you are a more consistent player. So I don't know. I just wanted to wrap that up. I just saw a lot of responses to things over the weekend, and like the story that Eric lost to Asgard. Well, Eric lost to Thor one in one of those games, and he lost to Mike DeLuca in the other. And to be fair, I don't want to come off like I'm criticizing Eric either. I really encourage people to watch his interview with Nate and DeLuca's interview with Nate after LVO, which, by the way, Nate and the Taco team crushed the stream there. When you listen to Eric talk, he is extremely classy and extremely sportsmanlike in his talking about those games that he lost and then, the games that he won and the decisions that he made over the course of the weekend. I found him really interesting and really sportsmanlike. But I just want to wrap up with the TLDR, which was, you know, just because someone has Thor 2 doesn't mean they play them every game. It's really hard to gauge, what was played over the course of a weekend when all you see is a leader stat and then people don't even bother to click on and look at that. It's hard to gauge and get a lot of information from an individual event. I think the best place to look at is probably LVO because it's the most competitive event or one of the most competitive events out there. And good players play good lists. That is not shocking or new information. So just wanted to share that and kind of get my thoughts out there on that just because I think people need to spend more time digging through the Longshanks and trying to get the context, from players as to what happens in games, what's going on in their local scenes, because like the stories are not as obvious just by looking at Longshanks results. I mean, if you look at the LVO Invitational or the LVO GT, you'll see really good players going 3-3. I know like Nobility went 3-3, and he's a great player. The guy's always X1 in events. Vince 3-3, he's always X1 in events. Like these are great players playing in a sea of great players, and you need a lot of luck at something like LVO alongside skill to do really well. So I think when we just dismiss things by looking at just the top 8 or someone's just playing X or Y, I think we lose a lot of context, and I think it leads to us making worse decisions about our own gameplay and our own list building.